Welcome to the virtual event organized by CXM Event in partnership with ATCS and Talkwalker. The topic of today's session is, do you have a 360-degree view of your enterprise social media strategy and its performance? First and foremost, I hope that you all are staying safe in this difficult time. On behalf of the entire ATCS, Talkwalker, and CXM event team, I would like to thank everyone for taking time out to be a part of the informative session. Now, talking about today's speakers, first we have Mr. Nikitesh Joshi, Delivery Director, ATCS, who will kick things off with an introduction to the current landscape of social media in India, the concerns and success state of an enterprise social media program. Nikitesh is a delivery director at ATCS with 15 years of experience in digital solutions and marketing automation across multiple industries. Then we have a presentation by Ms. Rucha Pandit, Principal Consultant ATCS, on building an enterprise social media program. Rucha is a digital strategist turned key accounts manager with 7 years of experience in digital automation and analytics. She has enabled enterprises build and operationalize their social media programs through strategic evaluation. After Rucha, we have Mr. Jason Castellani, partner ATCS, and he will discuss about social listening in detail and share his valuable insights. Jason is an experienced technology consulting partner and business developer, managing the social listening and insights verticals and Salesforce partner practice in the United States. We then have Mr. Benjamin Sobi, Managing Director, JPAC Talkwalker, and he will be giving us an introduction to the platform and its key features. Ben has an experience in working across multiple industry sectors and countries and has engaged with several C-level executives. He today consults partners and organizations on best practices in monitoring, measuring, and analyzing online conversations. And at last, we have Mr. Ruthwick Patak, Senior Accounts Executive Talkwalker, and he will share a live demo of insights derived from social data. Ruthwick has a background in marketing and international business, and at Talkwalker, he is closely working with the enterprises to help them leverage actionable insights and have informed decisions through data and customizable analytics. Now, without any further delay, I request Nikitesh to start the session. Over to you, Nikitesh.
Thank you, Shadi. Thank you for the kind introduction, and a very warm welcome to all of our attendees today. For today's agenda, I will start off with giving a little bit of an introduction into the state of social media in the Indian landscape. I'm pretty sure that most of us on this call are very well aware of how social media is an important part of our organizational setup and how it can become an important leverage when we reach out to our customers. But just to set that kind of a reminder, and I will then walk into how we can define a success state for what an enterprise social media program is. Rucha will then start off with the benefits of setting up this social program and how do you build it off? What are the different components? People, the process, and technologies. You hear a lot about people, process, and technologies from that. And then we will take a break for 10 minutes to have questions and keep this interactive so that we do not have 60 minutes of speaking and then questions coming through. So at the end of each of those mini sessions, we'll take a break for 10 minutes and entertain any questions. I will then hand it over to Jason. Jason will speak about social listening, which is one of those components of the enterprise social program setup. We will start off with that, and you usually have social listening as that first component. Jason will speak about that, and then we'll again break for 10 minutes for an interaction and question and answers, and then we will hand it over to our social listening partners, Talkwalker, who will then run us through a demo and an introduction into the tool. So, moving on. When we walked into this COVID world, at ATCS, what we saw was there were a lot of conversations and a lot of webinars and a lot of presentations happening around how social media is now becoming an extremely important part of Indian enterprise landscape when it comes to reaching out to consumers. The one thing that we could not see being discussed, however, was within an enterprise landscape, how do you go and start a program off? That we wanted to address because we have been solving this problem for our customers across the world for the past 5 years, helping them set up those social. And what we wanted to do was take hour and a half out to share that information in terms of how we've been doing it. So just a reminder, as we move into the core components with Rucha, Jason, Ben, and Ruthwick, was to put some of those numbers out, just to remind us of what really is happening outside within the India social landscape. Looking at the overall demographics and usage of social media, 50% of Indians are now active social media users. 52% of social conversations are being driven by millennials. When we look at how are users using social media, 83% of active online Indians now use social channels to talk about customer service experiences. That plays an extremely important part as a part of your enterprise, where you now know that one of the most important touch points is going to be social and digital. When we look at stats around what kind of content, how are brands interacting with their users, 92% of Indians that are connected to the internet are watching videos online, and 60% of brands are adding interactive elements to their social media content to attract Indian customers. Now, although these are more broader trends, what we see in our line of work is that these trends are across all sectors, so it's not just limited to a certain section. How do we define a success state for enterprise social media? So we hear a lot about how enterprise social media is complex, it's unpredictable. How do we go and start this off? If you've got so many brands, you've got regions, you've got geographies, how do you start off that process, and where do you begin and define that success state? So we sum it up in one line. We say success for achieving that social media state is to have a coherent blend of people and process that drives technology. So you've got all of the technology tool sets as a part of your enterprise ecosystem, but then you need the people and the processes to put that in place. The 5 key points that we like to speak about is that when you start building out your social media strategy, it should not be confined to silos. It should not be confined to just your corporate handles. It should not be confined to just your top performing brands. Your social media strategy should span the width and breadth of your entire organization, and then make it as specific to your products and services. Now, second, when you've got a technology stack, you want to consolidate that. You do not want to spread it out across multiple regions and geographies and make them disparate. You want to keep it as closely tight-knit as possible. You want to unify and operate all of your social accounts and profiles on that one consolidated technology stack. That just makes it easier for you to manage licensing. It makes it easier for you to also go ahead and manage the operational aspects. Third, you want to be publishing relevant content. You want to have that content prepared weeks, days, months ahead of time, because you want to be able to reach out in the quickest time possible. You then want to monitor and engage with your prospects and customers in real time. Like I said on the previous slide, you have customers that are now speaking about their customer service experiences on social platforms. You should be able to reach out to them and engage with them in real time. And then finally, you want to monitor this at a high level to ensure that the right kind of KPIs are being monitored. You want to take that across to your management to show them the value of what social is to the organization, and then use that data to drive sales, marketing, or customer service decisions. So with that introduction, I would now like to hand it over to Rucha to take you all through how we build an enterprise social program and what are some of those key components. Thank you, and Rucha, over to you.
Thanks, Niketesh. Thank you. I'm just going to advance our slide here. So as I advance my slide, we'll start off with talking about what a social media program is. And to start off with, a social media program is really a program that cohesively aligns 3 pillars in your people, process, and technology across an organization to allow for scalability and standardization. Today you'll hear people, process, and technology a lot because we think it's most important in an enterprise social media to have cohesive, aligned people, process, and technology that works really well together to enable your organization. Now, enterprise programs usually account for an organization's resources so that they're well structured. It creates scalable processes and also takes into account global, regional, and local level compliance and privacy guidelines into account. All of that, but with the lens of social media. It's something that's a little bit different, and especially as social starts to evolve and become a very critical part of everybody's lives, having all of these kind of factors play well together is really important for enterprise organizations. Now, in our experience, there's three different types of models that we've seen when it comes to enterprise social programs. So we'll go through each of them, starting with decentralized, going to centralized, and then our recommended, our favorite model, which is the hub and spoke model. All right. So to start off with decentralized, this is really your framework of a program that allows individual brands or local level teams to organize their social programs at their local or individual levels. This is really great for teams because they allow for autonomy for each of those teams to do as they wish in regards to their people, process, and technology. It allows your local teams to be able to work with agencies of their choice, leverage tools of their choice, and really be able to create their own processes and create their own compliance mechanisms, things like that. On the other hand, this also leads to a disjointed messaging to the customer at a corporate level. If you have one brand that is speaking with a specific tonality and then your corporate messaging is different, your customer can get confused in terms of what the general message coming from your company to them is. So this can really be a little bit confusing for your customer if you have multiple different teams, especially within a region, publishing their own messages and tonality. This can often also create duplication in processes. So you could have different teams that really have their own ways of working within a local region, but it would be almost like recreating a wheel because everyone's doing whatever they really please. It also leads for a lot of blind spots when it comes to meeting compliance guidelines in specific regions, especially in a world where we now value privacy guidelines, and in Europe where we have GDPR. Really looking at compliance and privacy guidelines from a global lens is really key when it comes to social media, and this can sometimes not take that into account. And then last but not least, it also leads to inefficient spend of budget because you have budgets that are being spent at a local level rather than at a macro level. To then jump to centralized, we look at this framework as a program that really leaves the onus on creating people, process, and technologies at one centralized teams level. And this is usually your global headquarters. The really great benefit of a program that is centralized is that it allows for central budgets to create efficiencies. So you have your global headquarters that is really being able to take advantage of enterprise pricing for technologies and being able to partner with larger technology organizations to really influence the roadmaps of products, as well as influence partnerships with all of your technology vendors. You also have no duplication of processes because everything from content publishing to engagement messaging models is being created at a global level and then trickled down to local level teams. That also leads to some efficiencies in budget because you're not at a local level spending too much time on building your own creative libraries and your own messaging. And then you have centralized compliance guidelines. So you're really accounting for all of those global blind spots to be covered when you have a centralized model. On the con side, you do have no localization of customers and messaging. This is something that sometimes can be very important because you may have your local level cultural traditions, or you may have customers at local levels that really want to engage with the company in a humanistic manner. And this can sometimes be lost if your global headquarters is creating the messaging and pushing it down. And that also takes the autonomy away from local level teams. So you could have misses on data reporting, or you could have immediate opportunities at local levels that may be lost in this type of a model. So last but not least, we have our hub and spoke model. And this is really a framework that creates a balance between the centralized and the decentralized. This allows for centralized teams to be able to enable people, process, and technology while giving freedom to local level teams for customization as needed. This has the benefits of both your centralized and decentralized. So starting off with, having centralized budgets that really have the ability to bring together all of your technology partners, and being able to engage with your technology partners so that you can get enterprise pricing. You again have no duplication of processes because you have a centralized team that is creating processes for publishing. You have centralized teams that may be creating processes for your compliance and your privacy guidelines. But this also allows for local level autonomy when it comes to specific messaging that your local teams may want to make with their customers, because they are really the ones that understand the customer best. This also has a unique benefit of providing an opportunity for local teams to localize their technology as well. So for example, we've seen this a lot when it comes to colleagues in China, where your social media is very different from social media in the rest of the world. This type of a model would allow your team members to really be able to pick technology partners that may serve more niche local need, and thus making sure that you're still staying connected with your customers while adhering to your broader level company or your company guidelines. There are some negative aspects to this. So a few of the challenges that you could face with a hub and spoke model is that you do have a central body for governing this entire process that's required. So there is a little bit of resourcing that is required at a central level to be able to create these processes, to have partnerships built within your organization across not just marketing and communications, but also across legal and compliance. So having a very communicative relationship across all of these departments is really important. And then the other con could also be that there might be misalignment or miscommunications between centralized and local level teams. So getting buy-in from all of your different partners that are going to be involved in a program such as this is really key. All right. So now that we've touched on the different types of enterprise social programs, let's jump into the people, process, and technology that we've talked about so much. So starting off with people. So people are really at the key, people are really at the heart of building an enterprise social program. It really, from a people standpoint, starts at the top. So, it's really starting with your executive sponsors that enable a team that's made of content creators. It allows for reporting, analytics, compliance leads to all work together to show regional representation. It also brings in technology partners. So formulating relationships across IT in this case is also really important. Inter-team cooperation is a really big part of the success model for this type of a framework. So again, having local level team input is super important to make sure that there's a feedback loop that is enabled, taking into account for processes that may be different at local levels that may need to be optimized at central. So this type of a framework really accounts for ensuring that you have your technology partners, your analytics, your content creators and your compliance individuals that are creating local processes at central level, and then trickling it down to replicate that model for all of your local level teams. So if we now jump to processes, your processes are really going to be a central function within the framework of your hub and spoke model. So it all starts with listening. It's something that we like to say, because you really want to be able to understand your customers' data. Understanding what your customer is saying about anything and everything when it comes to your company, whether it be your brand or your tonality, is super important when jumping into creating content and being able to enable publishing. The central message for your audience when you're publishing your content is all going to be fed in through social listening that you're conducting. And then once you've published your content, you want to be able to derive similar messaging and be able to connect with your audience at an engagement level as well. So we want to be able to derive messaging that allows supportive communities for your customers, so that we can avert crises and be able to really react in a positive manner to what our customers are saying. In terms of processes, governance and compliance are really intertwined within the listening, publishing, engagement models, because the regulatory guidelines that need to be met within social media practices are really at the core of having an enterprise social program. And then we have a circuitous process of ensuring that you have workflow management, content development, and social customer care that's built into each of these workflows, because like you see in the diagram, it's a very circuitous model. And then last but not least, we'll touch on technology. So from a technology standpoint, supporting your listening, publishing, engagement models to act as a unifier for flow of content, your centralized technology is really, really important. So understanding that you may have a lot of different tools at an enterprise scale that talk to each other and that integrate well with each other to allow for that flow of content is something that is at the core of the model. You start off with a tool that might be your social media management system, where you have the ability to listen, publish, and engage across all of your social media channels through one standard platform. But these platforms can also be integrated with other tools, such as your digital asset managers, your content management systems. You could have other tools that may hold your compliance guidelines and your approvals. But having all of these supportive technologies that really help elevate your listening, publishing, and engaging, and make sure that your processes for your community managers or your digital analysts are a lot more streamlined can be a huge benefit for an enterprise team. Another really great benefit of having enterprise level technology that ties in really well together is that you may have teams at a central level that have the ability and the budgets to create content at a central level and allow for localization, and having repositories through your content management systems and having content repositories that are scalable for local level teams really helps local teams to work with smaller budgets while still not having to invest in creatives at a local level. All right. So that was everything that I had from my end for, talking about an enterprise program. I'm going to hand it over to Shalini now for a quick Q&A.
Well, thank you so much, Richa. Your session was very, very insightful. I request all our attendees to either raise their hands or put your questions in the chat section. In the interest of time, this interaction is limited to 10 minutes only, and any questions unattended will be answered via email. So please feel free to ask Richa any question. Okay, so we have a question for Richa. What is a ballpark budget for a global program setup and year-to-year costs?
That's a great question. And this question can be answered on a spectrum. To kick off a global program at this scale that takes into account the people, process, and technologies really requires, I would say, about an investment of 1 crore to start off with, and at a local level or at a centralized level. And then at a program at scale, once you've actually had the chance to expand to multiple markets and you've acquired all of your technologies, you set up all of your processes, can average at about 3.5 crores a year.
All right. Thank you so much, Richa. And let's wait for a few more minutes and then we'll proceed towards Jason if we do not see any questions coming your way.
Sounds good.
Okay, we have another question. Hi, Richa. Can you throw some light on what are the common challenges we have seen while setting up such programs?
Again, another great question. So when we talk about a program such as a hub and spoke model, where you have a lot of different teams that are engaging with each other, you could have multiple levels of challenges that could pop up. Starting off with the biggest challenge, where you have to first identify an executive sponsor that is fully supportive of a program such as this across your enterprise, and then trickling it down to ensuring that you are able to coordinate across all of those different teams that you're going to be working with. So as I mentioned, for a hub and spoke model, you would need resourcing across IT partners, across your data and analytics teams, across content creators, and compliance and privacy guidelines. So being able to bring all of these resources together and getting them to really align on all of the different goals that you're setting for your program can be a challenge. It can also be a benefit because then you have the ability to create a really, really robust program that you can trickle down to local levels.
Okay, thank you very much, Richa. And I do not see any more questions coming your way. So I'm going to move towards Jason. Mr. Jason Castellani is a partner with ATCS. And Jason, the stage is all yours now.
Thank you, Shalini. Just transferring ownership of the presentation.
Okay, meanwhile, Richa, we have another question for you. Hi, Richa, how long does it take for such a program to be set up?
Great question. So in our experience, the first year is probably the most intensive because the first year is really when you're going to be spending a lot of time on getting a program like this set up. So I would say it takes about a year to get executive sponsorship and ensure you have budgets to then set up your base core listening, publish, and engaging processes. And then being able to scale within your second year into creating robust compliance and privacy guidelines.
All right, thank you so much, Richa, for answering Abhijit's question. Then thank you so much, Jason, for waiting, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Shalini. So Rucha gave us an idea of what the infrastructure should look like in terms of technology and people and structure for your enterprise social media setup. Now we're going to go into one of those specific most important services that is produced out of that infrastructure, and that's social listening and insights. So there are many different aspects, but this is one that we want to focus on today that we feel is one of the greatest opportunities within those set of services that you can produce. So what is social listening? It's about transforming social data into actionable insights. And social listening, and we use the two terms, social listening and social insights, interchangeably, but they are different. The broad term is social listening, and that's often, how you refer to this service or this practice, because you can conduct social listening and not produce insights. Sometimes that's not your objective. You use different tools, etc., to access all of that data, and you're listening to that data. You might then produce reports on that data with different visuals, but then to take that data and produce insights is a deeper step, because the insights is the interpretation of that data. Okay, that's when you have to have certain skilled individuals analyzing that beyond what you're going to find in a software solution. Just to give you a broad understanding of that. So social data, every second, millions of people are uploading data into social platforms, right? This is a set of data that we've never had access to, a decade ago. Traditionally, marketing departments have purchased this data, large data sets, lead generation, demographic information, etc. But now, beyond purchasing that data, there's public information where people are sharing personal information that was never able to be purchased before. And this is free public data out there. So this is why this information is so critical for marketing departments. And today we still see that, many organizations are still stuck on that traditional method of, well, we can only get good data through purchasing, but you can actually get deeper, richer data through social interaction, information, and conversation. As I said, that you don't necessarily have to purchase. You just have to have the infrastructure and the tool set in place to be able to handle those mass amounts of data and specifically hone in on the information that's most important to your brand and products and services. So this is very intimate data. Think about what you share in your personal lives on social. Sometimes it's, about your personal lives. It's about your experiences, customer services, a product you may love. So this is all information we want to have access to. So what do marketers do with this? How do they manage that vast amount of data and quickly react to it? And that's what we're going to get into a little bit. But as I said before, you need the proper tool sets to listen into this data, because this is big data, tremendous amounts of big data. And listening on those native platforms in a way where you're logging into your company's Facebook page and trying to manage it in that context, maybe you can handle engagement through that, but you can't handle listening through that, because listening is when you're going beyond your own handles and just listening to broad consumer and customer data out there. And that's really what we're focusing here. There's really three main aspects of social activities. There's engagement, publishing, and listening. And we're focusing on that listening point. So understand here, we're going beyond your own social handles. That's not the information we're trying to access here. So how can this social data add value to your organization? So we have three main segments here about the benefits of social media listening. You can avoid blind spots. This is where you're not prepared, or you're not knowing that there's discussions out there happening around your brand, or maybe there's current events happening that directly influence your brand, product, or service that you don't know about it. So this is real-time monitoring about what's going on out there that could affect you. Increase engagement. Identify opportunities to engage in conversations. Again, listening to current events out there, understanding opportunities where these current events directly relate to a product or services that you offer, and you can jump into that conversation and increase engagement. So you're talking about engaging with people, your customers, on their platforms, right? This is not your traditional email. This is not text message. This is not broad traditional marketing through TV, billboards, ads. This is actually connecting with your customers on their platforms. All right. So you're going to increase engagement because you're on the same level with them at that point where they want to be. Real-time monitoring. Similar to blind spots, I touched on this a little bit. This is where you can get insights or activities around your brand in real time, something that was not able to be accessed before. You can also handle crisis this way, and we'll get in a little more about that in the further slides. Learn about competitors. Competitor information is always hard to get, but now you can get competitor perceptions from your customers or their customers. What are other customers commenting about competitors? What are they saying are the advantages of a competitor or the shortfalls of a competitor? Again, public information that you can access. So it's not just about your brand or product or services, it's also about your competitors. And then understanding the consumer journey. This is about understanding how customers use your products or services. or looking at how they use generally these products or services from a broad perspective, not necessarily yours, and then understanding those touch points and where you need to engage with those customers. And last, identify digital opinion leaders and advocates. We often refer to this as influencers. And we see this in traditional marketing where, where someone is tapping into, let's say, a sports athlete or a celebrity to help sponsor or grow awareness around their brand. Well, now you can also see that whenever they're interacting with somebody or connecting with that influencer, they're now asking them to please be active on social media. And sometimes now what we'll do is we will reach out to influencers that are only present on social media and maybe only known in the social media world. And this is usually a more affordable way than going after a celebrity, but going after somebody that's, let's say, just a brand ambassador in the social space. And you create a relationship with them and identify ways that they can help promote your brands or services. So it's another platform, this whole social world. There are people that are celebrities in that social world, that not necessarily in, outside of that. But again, this is, you can cross and have those individuals that are also in that traditional method also use social. But identifying influencers is a key opportunity here for sponsorship and brand awareness. So how do we do it? How do we go about doing social listening and producing insights? This is at a very summary level what that process is about. Number one, the most important process I'd say in all this is the brief. So we have to do a brief. You have to understand what the client is trying to accomplish. What's the question that they're trying to answer? And these questions can be extremely broad, and we'll get into the categories of different how we segment these services or products that are produced, because I think that's important in understanding how does one of those questions fit into this process. For example, if you wanted to do research around a product that already exists, okay, so then a brief is going to be, we're going to ask, well, what type of information are you looking for? Are you looking at how people are using your product, what the perceptions are to that product or service? What's the duration of time that we want to go back? Are we looking for specific individuals or demographics, or do we want to segment those demographics and see how each group, maybe within a different age group, interacts with your product? So this is a brief. What are the questions that you're trying to answer? And it's important for that to be a dialogue back and forth. This is not a form that's going to be filled out by the client. This is a dialogue to best understand, because we're also going to steer that client in understanding what type of information are you going to get out of social. All right. So it's a little bit different than the traditional survey that's maybe going out to somebody. So it's important for us to explain to that customer, what questions can we answer? So this is a back and forth. And then that framework is really a template of how is this information going to be returned back to me? And then we go into the planning. How long is this going to take? How many years are we going back? Do we have the tools and the necessary software to support this? And then we get into what I call the evaluation, or the creative. It's the development of this insight report. So analysis, evaluation, and rethinking. So what is rethinking? When you have this question and you've got the brief established and you go into the social data, as we all know, it's a vast amount of data. There are hypotheses and assumptions that we think we're going to get, but we don't always know what we're going to find, right? So what happens is we start going in and we see forks in the road. We see deviations. We see things that we never expected to find. We might find a new perception that the customer never expected. We go back to the customer and say, hey, is this of interest to you? We're finding a little niche trend within your product that you didn't know when you asked us about to produce this insight report. So then they say, yes, let's create a section for that. So then we rethink, and this process starts over. This happens a lot in the social space, because once you reach in and start listening, you will find things that you never knew existed, and then that reshapes, of course, the insights and the analysis that you want to produce. And in the end, you produce. What's that handover? That handover could be a PowerPoint, a PDF, or it could be a dashboard. And I think this has a lot to do with the timing of the research that you're doing, because if this is research that's a 3-year research product, insight report, then maybe it's going to be delivered in a hard report to the consumer. But maybe this is actually a crisis management report that's updated on a weekly basis, and that's best delivered in a live dashboard, because people want to constantly every week look in and see what's new information or insights around the crisis management. So now we're going to go into the types of listening. I touched on this. There's really three main segments how we break up this type of listening. And I would say this is typically broken up by time. Okay, so we have radar, pulse, and discovery, and these are terms that are regularly used in the industry, but they're segmented by time. So radar is the shortest duration of time that you're going to go back and analyze data. So crisis management, event monitoring, real-time monitoring, daily monitoring of your brand, right? If you have a very important brand that people are interacting with every day, you have a large social presence, there's conversations and there's things that can happen on a daily basis that you want to interject in, because maybe you want to minimize crisis, or maybe you want to help expand a positive interaction by, let's say, someone that has a huge following. So a radar is something that's done typically on a daily basis. Who's the people that usually, or the different departments that usually look at or need such services? You're talking about PR, communications, social, digital teams, etc. Radar is not going to be something for a product development group, right? Because a product development group wants to do long-term research, and they'll more fall under the discovery segment. But your communications needs to monitor crisis every single day. Then we move into pulse. Pulse are typically tactical reports. These are now times of 1 to, let's say, 6 weeks. A pulse report is going to maybe give you activity around a campaign. So you launch a campaign, and that campaign is typically, let's say, lasting 1 month, but you want to do a weekly analysis of the health or the performance of that campaign. You know, how much engagement are we getting on this campaign? Is it successful? Do we need to stop and change the path of our campaign because we're not seeing our key metrics improve or perform as we predicted they would? Brand health tracking. So when we look at the radar, that's every day, seeing if there's any crisis management or any positive activities you can expand on at that moment. But brand health tracking is more looking at the brand over a course of a week or 2 weeks and just making sure that your brand is maintaining perceptions around it that you would expect. Who are the typical audiences around this? Your brand managers, insights team, and social and digital teams. Social and digital teams also could include your customer services. So when we talk about social customer care, many organizations now, as Rucha touched on, they have handles specifically in the social space that are just for their customer service. And even those departments want to have an understanding of how is our customer services that we're performing, or is there issues out there that we need to turn into customer service cases? And they would typically fall under pulse reports to look on a weekly basis what type of customers do we need to interact with that are having customer services issues. The last one is discovery or exploratory. This is your longest term look back. An exploratory report could go anywhere from 1 to 3 years back in the social data space, and you can obtain that much data typically through your software tools. So this is where we start talking about your R&D department saying, okay, let's do research prior to creating a product, because we want to understand how customers typically interact or use these products or services. And this is going to be an input into our development of our product or service. Or maybe it's post-product services, and we want to understand over the past year how customers are interacting with those products or services. So this is a far look back. And maybe it's not necessarily directly related to your products or services, but you want to understand generally in your industry how customers may interact. Let me give an example. You want to understand from let's say, marketing insights department wants to best understand how to engage or market to their audiences in certain countries under certain economic or political environmental issues. Okay, so how do we interject and market to individuals in an economy that's severely suffering, right? What are people's fears? What do we want to make sure that our marketing message doesn't convey that could create more fear for individuals that already have fear or insecurity or financial insecurity? What do we, when we interject and market in those countries that are at a poor economic times, where do people look for comfort? And then that shapes your marketing message based on economic conditions in certain countries. This is research that you can do in the social space and understand what are people saying in different economic situations about, let's say, food, for example. We know that in poor economic situations, people typically will look for comfort food. And that may be an ideal time if you're a company that produces such products to interject, but you need to know how to interject. And you need to understand the political atmosphere to make sure that you don't cause any more harm, and you're only finding a way to connect with people's emotions in a way that is most effective based on the environment around them. Okay, so let's jump into a few examples. I touched on some of them when we talked about the 3 segments of how we how we group these services or products, and as I said, that's typical and standard in the industry. I talked about some examples, but let's show you some real examples. So something that ATCS did when COVID started happening is we thought this was a very good time to demonstrate social listening or insights to around COVID-19. Why? Because everybody is impacted and affected by it. So this is something that we've made available public, and this was done on a bi-weekly basis for many months. And all I've done here is I've just taken a snippet of 3 slides from one of those months, one of those weeks' reports. And I believe this was back in May. Okay, and what we wanted to focus on in that report was consumer purchases. So how was COVID-19 in the United States affecting consumer purchases? And what we found here is you're going to see a trend chart here that shows and demonstrates a dramatic increase in consumer conversation online about purchases. So we know during COVID, it was a time when people were concerned financially because COVID in the United States caused many job losses and companies to shut down. But actually, from a consumer purchase perspective, conversation increased twofold, 250% it increased. So what was driving that conversation? And you can see we've categorized. So we go into that social conversation and we segment it by different industries. So we have electronics, consumer goods, home furnishings, entertainment subscriptions, health and fitness. Now, going into this, we have no idea how we're going to segment across these different product categories or industries. It's what we find when we start drilling into the data. And we found that these 4 segments did appear in the conversation, and it allowed us to segment in this way. So what we found is home furnishings and entertainment subscriptions went up. Home furnishings went up because people are establishing home offices. Everybody's working from home now. Businesses shut down. That's what people were talking about. How do I set up my home office? Entertainment subscriptions. Everybody's home now. They're signing up for your Netflix, your Disney Plus, your Hulu, et cetera, in the United States. So those conversations were showing up. We're increasing. So we summarize on the right some key insights. And not only do we summarize, but we're going to show some blurbs or actual tweets, Facebook posts, et cetera. And you'll see some there. So then we move on to specifically drilling down into one of those segments, which was health and fitness purchases. So as we saw in the previous, there was an increase in health and fitness. Well, why? And if you can see this over time, this is January to May because we produced this report in May. So COVID started happening in March, and that's when the spike occurred. And it was temporary. It was really only for 1 month. And that 1 month was people talking about setting up their home gyms because gyms closed. So we're able to provide this information. You're able to provide this information to yourselves through social data. And what does this mean? Well, this means there's tremendous conversation right now about home health and fitness. Do you have a product or service where you can engage in that conversation? It doesn't necessarily mean you have some gym equipment or barbells or a treadmill, but maybe this is a good time to talk about supplements, people at home making smoothies, etc. So again, it's about not necessarily always looking directly at your products or services, but listening to the broad conversation that's happening out there about consumer trends and finding out how can you interject in that conversation to best benefit your product and service. All right. One more. So this is where now we show examples from the social space. So these are a bunch of tweets because what we want to do is we want to reinforce to the client that, how did we derive these insights? And now we show actual screenshots and examples that support the insight that we had come up with. So consumer conversation around health and fitness. And just picking one out, the last tweet on the bottom left, it's not just a replacement for a full gym, but I bought a set of adjustable free weights between 10 and 60 pounds. it's a great investment. I'm trying to squeeze in workouts at home. Now, I'm showing you 5 conversations, but there was probably 100,000 conversations about this. So again, we just want to show some examples here. We're not going to show the client 100,000 tweets, of course, but supporting that overall insight that we derive. So that's the last of the examples. I hope that gave you a good understanding of what social listening and insights is and how that might help your product, services, etc. Engage in the social space. So please, any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. It was a very insightful session. And yes, we do have a question for you by one of our attendees. Through social listening, can I know what are my target customers' interests and passion?
Through social listening, can I know what my target customers' interests and passions?
Yes.
So in the social space, what I would say in that is yes, broadly, not necessarily your specific customers. Well, there's 2 ways to do this. You have your specific customer, and that's going to be your customer database, and maybe that's in your CRM system or your lead gen system. If you're as you interact with your own customers that are using your products and services, if you're capturing their social handles, then you can directly engage with your customers. But I would say more often than not, the situation here is that we're not talking about your own customers. We're talking broadly about your customers / your potential customers, okay? So let's say you have a product and service. What we would advise here is then we would go into the social space and generally look around all those products and services that match yours, okay? And then find out how consumers are talking in the social space around those products and services. And some of them may be yours, or maybe they're not, but they're broadly your potential customers. And then we can determine their interests and passions by monitoring their social conversations. So absolutely. Then what we do is we build what's called a persona. And we say, this is the persona or the individual that most likely would use your product or service. And that then helps you from a marketing perspective. So this is called building personas, and you absolutely use social data for building personas. But I just want to differentiate your true customers versus your potential customers. When we go out into the social space, we're mainly looking at broadly those potential customers that use similar products or services.
Thank you very much, Jason. And we have another question. Hi, Jason. How can we convert more leads using social listening?
Converting leads. So you can do converting leads through several platforms, and it depends if you're let's say you're a B2B or B2C, because that process does vary greatly. So if you're B2B, one of the most popular platforms that you would look at is LinkedIn. At least in the United States, this #1 platform where we're going to go B2B, and you can use that conversation heavily to convert leads. So let me give an example on a B2B with a LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has several different tools. Not only, you can use your standard social tools to capture the LinkedIn conversation, but LinkedIn also gives you the ability to identify, let's say, like customers or like B2B customers. All right, so you have your existing customers, you look at their expanded network, and you look at similar profiles as your existing customers. So let's say you're targeting marketing directors, marketing professionals, right? So you're going to maybe look at your existing customers and then look at their network and find other marketing directors or professionals. Or you just go in broadly, and LinkedIn gives us the flexibility to filter on that type of persona. Now, you want to look at their social conversation and the social data to know what's the best way for me to reach out to this individual. So if I know the types over the past year, I know the types of conversations and the types of posts or the interactions that this individual, this marketing director is doing in LinkedIn, I'm going to take the best approach to interact or to reach out to this individual. So for example, I see this person is constantly posting about automation or RPA in marketing. I'm going to reach out to this person with that type of conversation and say, hey, I understand that you're interested in automation. I also know this about automation. So I'm just saying you're engaging with something that they have an interest in. So yes, you can use that to help convert a lead, because otherwise your lead, you're normally going in and you're sending a generic, let's say, in-mail to them on LinkedIn. It's generic and they're going to be able to tell it's generic. But if you've customized it based on what their normal activity is in the social space, then you can generally convert it better. So I'll stop. I'm not talking about C2C just because I want to get to the other questions, but I wanted to give you at least a B2B example.
Thank you very much, Jason. And we have 2 more questions for you. So which processes or methods would you suggest for B2B client pulling, as more of the processes highlighted are towards B2C clients?
Yeah, so I actually just touched on that. So you're right. B2B is completely different from C2C. Your C2C, your general social conversation is best. Your B2B is much more challenging, because when you're looking in the social space, it's not a company is not out there, talking about their passions and interests. If you're going to look at a company's handle in the social space, it's typically their marketing. So you're right. Your general social conversation, you're not going to find. What you should go after then, though, depending on the size of the companies, you could focus on the executives in that company and see what they're doing. But I would mostly shift away from that, and I would say you need to look at solutions like the LinkedIn solution that I proposed. It's a completely different tack. But LinkedIn, only one example, because that's dominant in the United States for companies, is where we can find individuals, executives in that company, or certain individuals that you want to target, such as, maybe a marketing professional or a procurement professional within that company, and see how they're interacting on social. And as I said, that gives you a path to at least interject on the same, in a similar conversation or of one of their interests.
Right, thank you very much. And then we have another very interesting question for you, Jason. How do you convert more leads in a commodity space and your target audience is a farmer? This has to be in Indian context.
Yes. And maybe I'm not the best one to answer that. That's a very specific question and a tough one to answer, because we're talking social space. But let me also say, when we talk social space, at least for us as an organization, when we do an exploratory report, we are not just talking your general broad social platforms. We are also talking about any digital information that we can get access to. And that's important, because let's say someone is not active on Twitter and Facebook, your most common platforms that we would utilize to obtain information in certain parts of the world. But maybe someone is interacting on a blog. Maybe it's a finance blog. Maybe it's a commodity type platform blog where people are having, not blog, but thread. You have Reddit, for example. So we utilize Reddit as well when we're doing insights. We use news information. We look at comments on news articles. We have some publications that will come out from very reputable institutions, and you might have 1,000 comments on that article. So these are different ways that we can tap into specific, let's say, industry or customers, like a farmer, for example, that maybe is not on those platforms, but maybe is on another platform. That might not directly answer your question, but I think at least gave me an opportunity to say, social is really anything that's out there in the digital space, not just your normal, your most common or popular platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Thank you very much, Jason, for answering all the questions in detail. Quite insightful. And I'm going to proceed towards our next speaker, Benjamin Sobi. So I'm sure we are all looking forward to your demo, Ben. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Shalini, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. So thanks again for CXM and also ATCS for having us with you all. So first, what we'll do is that we'll give a quick introduction on Talkwalker, right? also introducing the concept of conversational intelligence. And then my colleague Ruthwick will be giving you a quick overview of Talkwalker. Yeah, next please. So very briefly on Talkwalker. So we're a listening and analytics company, right? And what we do is that we empower leading brands and agencies to optimize the impact of their marketing, their communication, and consumer insight strategies. So our platform provides organization with different solutions through our P&P framework that I'll mention more about in the coming slides. Basically, that helps to protect, measure, promote brands worldwide by leveraging AI and leveraging AI across different sets of data, and namely media, consumer, customer, and market data, right? So we have 6 offices around the world. So I'm talking to you from Singapore. That's why it's a bit dark. It's already night here. And our HQ is in Luxembourg. We have 350 experts, with like a third of them being engineers and scientists, helping us continuing to drive our leadership in innovation, delivering a strong offering in the market. Next, please. All right. So I think we've heard some of those already in the session before, but really when it comes to leveraging analytics across an organization, especially an enterprise organization, in order to drive data-driven insights. So we see 4 main challenges, right? So first is data is in silos. So what does that mean? That different departments, different teams are all using different tools. They're using different data sets. And they're doing that, but still trying to measure and provide insights, right? When they should really be using a single source of truth to make business decisions. Second, digital landscape is changing. That's even more true now and over the last month. Of course, everybody had to adapt faster than maybe they planned. So here already the industry was evolving, and then you have then social networks also evolving, right? So for example, Facebook, they're changing their product every day. And so businesses really need to adapt their process accordingly. And so there's also new networks coming in, different types of data to access. And so really a flexible solution is needed in order to adapt quickly. What we see also is that generally taking action from the data in order to drive impact can be challenging, right? So the ability here to make data-driven decision is very low. Is what we see. So there's a lack of a strategic approach and missing methodologies to analytics and data in general, right? So organizations don't really know how to leverage the frameworks or analytics system in place in order to be able to uncover those insights quicker. And then finally, so driving data democratization, right? So across the whole organization. So software tools analytics can be too complicated sometimes. And it makes it challenging to drive adoption in order to easily extract the insights that would be needed. Next. So what we've seen lately by talking to different people, so an organization, so really we are generally organizations are looking for power and simplicity, generally in one platform it's possible. And they want that in order to have an integrated view, to leverage AI to analyze text, video, image, but also speech. And across all the different conversation channels, such as social networks, but also review website, call center, email, survey data, and even more. All right, and this could help them break the data silos that we've mentioned. So conversational intelligence can really help enhance products, improve communication, create more targeted marketing, but also drive organization and brands loyalty through different solutions that can help really create the brands that are loved by customer. So we've seen a trend recently with organizations that are analyzing data by brand. So by brand, I mean like own data, earned data, competitor, but also category insights, audience insights, and they're expecting all function in the business to understand each of these areas in order to build strategies, to innovate, to develop campaigns, but also afterwards report using structured but unstructured data that will be coming from various sources, right? And so our approach to conversational intelligence really permits to these organizations to consolidate all of the data and reporting into one platform. And so that's taking advantage of like our in-house AI that will afterwards allow organization and people to segment and to visualize the data, allowing them afterwards to, for example, easily spot trends, different opportunities, but also risks that they should be aware of. And so we have different methodology, and especially on the implementation part that have been proven. And so we work with a lot of those brands to develop the project structure, the right frameworks, the right workflows, but also the governance, right? And governance with, for example, our tiered user access level, and that's really to democratize the access to the data within the organization, and therefore unlocking the potential to extract insights for different users within the organization. Next. So here it's like, where is the data coming from? Generally, what are the different sources, or where can you find structured and unstructured data from which you can derive insights? So here it's about media, it's about customer, it's about consumer and market data, right? And so we do this by analyzing not only text, but also images, videos, and all in the same platform with different sources, 187 languages, including all the vernacular ones in India, helping generally organization get a really full picture, or as full a picture as you can get, because we've mentioned that it can be sometimes some limitations, right? In order afterwards to drive the strategies that they need to put in place in their companies and in their departments, right? But additionally, through different integration, we're also able to ingest, to analyze, and to centralize consumer data, customer data, market data. And that's really to understand what we'd call the voice of the customer or the voice of the consumer, but also the overall impact with the ability to analyze really the structured data, such as, for example, the call center, the survey data, website data, search, but also media spent. And we see also some of them connecting that with market data, weather data or stock price, for example. Next. And so, that brings us to our proven framework that I mentioned quickly. So I won't go too much into details there, but what we wanted to do is structure a framework around three main solutions, right? And those three main solutions are protect, measure, and promote. And each of them highlight either 3 or 6 use cases, right? Giving us 12 main use cases on how we can work with organization, right? And so for protect, it's really helping companies protect their brand and measure their reputation globally. And that's across all communication channels. So that's, for example, by using predictive alerts, we're able to identify early warning signals for the organization, manage crisis situation, but also generally helping optimizing the reputation, but analyzing the main drivers by region, for example. For the measure part, so it's really about helping organization measure the business impact of their communication strategy, fully automated in customized way. And so here it's really about measuring the metrics that are linked to business outcomes in order to optimize the impact of every brand communication that is out there, right? And then for the promote, we help brands uncover the insights to act on that, and in order to drive impact within the business. And this is what we'll be focusing on during the demo of Talkwalker that my colleague will be doing soon. So it's really about looking at consumer insights through audience, category insights, potentially identifying influencers in order to afterwards creating targeted content that will resonate with the audience, right? Next. And so finally, so we really do believe that businesses can be empowered, right, to make data-driven decisions, and this is why we've built the software and the different solutions that we provide today, right? But it's really about understanding conversation in context, right? So it's blending data to have a single source of truth across the organization, across multiple sources of media, social, customer data that can then be leveraged across departments. Understand what your customers are saying, why they're saying it, and where also they're saying that across multiple touch points, leveraging, not the text, video, speech, technology, right? And then so 100% of our technology and our AI, is owned by Talkwalker, making us, quite agile, when it comes to providing organization with innovative but also customizable solution, right? And then so we've touched upon that. So we've built our framework, and also a database of what we'd call, for example, taxonomies, right? So people are never starting from scratch. Okay, we have these capabilities to show what others have been doing, how they've been leveraging that in order to drive very quick impact and immediate value when it comes to embarking into this journey, right? And finally, so we do see, the people we work with as strategic partners, and we really do listen to them, also learn from what they're doing, how they're doing it, in order to innovate, right? And then propose solution and add it to our roadmap in order always, to be working hand in hand with our partners. All right. So that's about Talkwalker, right? A quick intro on what we do and generally also how we do it and why we do it. So now my colleague Ruthwick will be taking you through our solution by highlighting, an example of consumer insights that can be gathered using Talkwalker.
What we're looking at right now is the homepage or home screen of Talkwalker. And this entire environment is what we call as a Talkwalker project or workspace. So say, for example, if an enterprise has multiple teams, offices, or regional business units working on the same platform, they could have different projects or different workspace on the left-hand sections that you can see over here, right? So really gives organization a streamlining of data sharing between different teams. So what do we have on a Talkwalker project? Let's begin with the settings module, or the modules that you see over here. This is a place where you tell the platform what to look for. Just connect your social media accounts, or just simply type a hashtag or a keyword, or blend together with a Boolean logic to create powerful search queries. Also, from a governance and administration aspect, you can have multiple users, generate the user activity reports, access to account libraries, and so on and so forth. So basically the brain behind the platform. Once you have done that, you can access our IQ apps. These are pre-configured or pre-built templates on some of the common use cases. Just click on this IQ app and you can access to instant access insights. So I'll just show you what are the templates that are available handy for you. So starting from brand listening to crisis management to competitive intelligence, campaign monitoring, influencer identification. So if I had to look at what's happening around my brand, I would just click on brand listening dashboard and it will populate all the key performance indicators, performance over time, where my conversations are happening, which all social media or online media is generating buzz for me. So a lot of information right off the bat. Also on the left-hand section, I could access and kind of segregate these conversations into different categories. So I could look at, okay, what are the top themes being discussed around my brand? What type of audience is engaging with the brand, influencers, locations, conversations, etc. So there's just one part of it. Let me just go back to the homepage. Okay, so that's basically IQ apps. These are standard templates, but say if you have to create something very custom, something very personalized to what you're looking for, then you can use our topic analytics and channel analytics to basically slice and dice data through some powerful filters and kind of dive deeper into analytics. And all those dashboards that you create will appear in our dashboard section. Last but not the least is reports and alerts. This is where you manage the output that is coming from the platform. All the dashboards, all the reports could be converted into 100% customizable alerts to share across the enterprise, and you can choose different formats for that. So this is a quick overview of what the platform has on the homepage. For today's session, what I've done is focusing on one of the custom dashboards based on consumption insights. So let's jump right away to see the data live in action. So what we're trying to do essentially is to see and understand the pattern of how people consume beer. So we worked with one of the largest brewing company in the world, and they wanted to understand, what type of beers have been trending, what people do prefer. So just right off the bat, you can see what really drives the sentiment toward beer. So if we can look at it from a negative to positive scale, clearly we can see public health, criminal justice, or mental health is being discussed more on the negative limelight. Whereas if we talk about the positive sentiments, it's mostly towards people enjoying a good weekend, or having a good food, or having a great day. So mostly on that aspect. Secondly, we can also look at where do people consume their beers. This is purely based on people mentioning beer along with a location. As you know, because of the lockdown, people have mentioned a lot of home, house. They are enjoying house parties. So that's why you can see almost 40% of conversations are coming around beer and house. But then you have a lot of conversations related to bar, concert, party. But if we just cross check and see the net sentiment for these locations, you can see people mostly assert positive sentiment towards concerts and parks, so mostly towards the outdoor segment. Also, what we did was just to add more value to the insights that we are fetching. We looked at more from an image and video perspective. So apart from the text mining that we do, we also do and scan millions of images and videos just to see what's the context behind them. So people, they have mentioned beer around beach. Then you can see street, store. If I have to look at what are the type of conversations that are coming, you can see clearly over here. These are the top engaging posts where people have mentioned beer and the background is a beach or something else. So the third aspect we looked at is more on the emotional and the functional benefits associated with beer. And here, what we did is we also looked at from a brand perspective. So, be it Bud Light, be it Guinness, what type of benefits people associated. If you look at Bud Light, people associate, more on the enjoyment side. Whereas if you look at Guinness, it is more towards the health side of it. Whereas with respect to functional benefits, Guinness is considered more tasty, whereas you have Bud Light, which is more balance discussed in pricing as well as taste. So that's one thing. And the last part would be to look at the consumption insights on why people abandon drinking beer. Again, there are a lot of religious aspects, a lot of different health aspects, but the most discussed was the sobriety, and then you have the nutritional value or to avoid hangover. So just to try to categorize all these conversations and make much more meaning to the data that we are tracking. Secondly, what we did is to look at different trends in beers, just to see where are this conversation usually happening, which continent or which country talks the most about it. We could see that more than 50% of the conversations originates from United States, followed by United Kingdom. And then we looked at, okay, which type of beers are being discussed. So we can see that craft beer or lager or ale are kind of the most discussed. And then you have the trend over time. Something which is very interesting is that on 9th of September, there was a huge spike for the ale beer. And if you want to dig down deeper and see the reason behind this spike, you can click on the tip of the graph and understand the conversations. So pretty interactive on those sites. But something which is very interesting here is to look at brand affinities. So when people are talking about beers in general, which are the brands that are being discussed? So we can see Heineken, Bud Light definitely are the beer brands, but then you have FCB, Bayern Munich, all those sports brand coming in because of the sponsorship. And something that I wanted to show here is how we capture the logos inside an image and videos. So that's something very powerful to see which all brands logos are being shared together on the same post. Moving on to see what are the ingredients. So what we're doing is we looked at a broad level category on types of beer. Now we're looking at, okay, what are the ingredients that people really kind of associate with beer. So you can see it's more of hops, followed by malt, and then looking also at the perception of beers in terms of the elements. So people usually talk about the flavor or the aroma of the beer compared to the appearance or the mouthfeel. Similarly, we can also look at these elements in different countries, because every country has its own choice, or every country has its own kind of understanding or inclination towards beer. So you can see when it comes to United States and United Kingdom, it's mostly flavor and aroma, whereas if you talk about South Africa, it's almost 100% going towards the flavor side. So yes, flavor is something that people really kind of stress on. Then you have the appearance of the beer. So just looking at what type of colors of beer people like to drink, we can see it's black. But then if you look at the net sentiment, it's more positive towards amber or pale, right? So that's also something that you can draw conclusions looking at different widgets. Going one step further to look at now from the colors and the trends, we look at the flavors of beer. So people usually are discussing more about the sweetness or the sourness or the bitterness compared to the other flavors. And you can see how the sweetness has been discussed over time. It has been dominant throughout the period along the years. And for the product team, they can also look at, okay, what type of packaging people do prefer. So, plastic, again, more towards the environment friendly. You can say it's still being discussed, possibly in the negative light, but you can see almost 86% of the conversations are coming for plastic, then followed by glass. Also, if you look at net sentiment, plastic has the lowest positive sentiment compared to the other. So clearly goes with the sentiment that is around the world right now. And lastly, we could also look at the audience. So here we're looking at, okay, what is the gender? What is the age split? We can see 25 to 34 is the one talking the most about beers. But then you have, Gen X also talking a lot about around 33%. And then you have 35 to 44 and 45 to 54. Similarly, top occupations, what type of authors, what type of interest areas do these people have who talks about beers. We can see food and drinks, family and parenting, sports. Something again goes back to the fact that the beverage companies always associate themselves with a lot of sporting events. So you can see a lot of athletes might be talking about the brand. A lot of influencers might be talking about the brand. Also, type of beer each segment prefers. So you can look at what do people are associating in terms of the segments. So most of it is around foodies, music lovers, parents. Again, looking at the same data, but then analyzing it in different segments. Okay, so yeah, that was a quick demo. I hope it was insightful. I'll leave the floor open for any questions you may have.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Ruthwick. That was very insightful, very helpful, and informative. And we have two questions. Probably you or Ben can answer these two questions. So the first one is 5 signs your organization is too siloed. How to know this?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So of course, it might differ, but what generally I think would be signs that there's clear silos within the organization is like when you have to wait, when you have to chase information from other business units, right, or other business units from yours, have to wait from yours. Lack of respect between business units. People saying, well, this is not my job, this is absolutely yours. And generally always, not trying to be accountable for anything. Also, well, just generally limited collaboration, right? People, keeping information, within their departments, not sharing, even though it would be extremely important. And afterwards also, well, it's quite clear to see when departments have different priorities. But whether or not those priorities are aligned, to the corporate objective and the corporate goal. What is the company objective, and how does my department fit into this? If you can see a mismatch there, I think clearly, there's some work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Richa. I can also add that from an enterprise perspective, if you're taking a look at your organization and you're seeing multiple departments that have similar functions and are approaching those similar functions in different ways, and there's no standardization across your organization, you likely are looking at silos as well. So, for example, if you have brand A is completely working with a different organizational structure with different technology for the same type of function as brand B, that likely is duplication of effort and also building silos within the organization.
Okay, so this is for Ben. How do you break an organizational silos in the most easy way?
Well, I think by providing data and by providing, being proactive, by coming, with an open mind, and proposing solutions that would be beneficial from not only your department or your role, but also the person you're trying to talk to, generally. And as Rucha just said, it's true that if you have different standards, different framework, methodology within the organization, it's tough. So trying to maybe standardize those and being someone with proposition and someone that would find ways for the organization to collaborate better will definitely be going on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Ben, for answering. And well, I don't see any more questions coming through. I think we can conclude today's session. And once again, thank you to all our respected attendees and speakers for an insightful hour and a half. To conclude, ATCS would like to offer all the attendees from today's session a free one-on-one 2-hour consulting workshop to evaluate your current state of social and how you can optimize for better results. Kindly make sure to utilize the free service offered by ATCS post the event. CXM will be sending across a link for you to register for the same. And thank you all for your time. Wishing you all a great day ahead and looking forward to having you all once again for our future events. Thank you so much, attendees. Thank you so much, speakers. It was a very informative session.